All right. So, yeah, thanks for joining in, guys, and welcome to the second of our debriefings that we have here today. We'll try to keep it interactive as well throughout the whole thing. Um, it will be recorded as well if you want to see it again later on, or if somebody who's not joining the meeting here will want to see it as well. For those of you who joined me the last time, thanks for joining the last time. We're kind of gonna build up on top on what we had the last time. Um, the stuff we mainly looked at the last time was these kind of more basic things. When do we turn base? These kind of things. Have the 3 mile pointer of one aircraft lined up with the target of the preceding aircraft to turn base. All this with the speed, keeping the speed kind of as high as possible in order not to slow everything down. These kind of basic things. So on the downwind, once you have the 3 mile pointer lined up with the airplane in front, then we turn base. We go 200 when we turn on base, we turn on final. When we are the ILS, we go 180, and then we hand over to tower, and that's basically everything. So, yeah, that's all. Um, of course, now I would like to expand a little bit on a couple of topics because this is just in theory, and there's so many things happening in the practical stuff when sitting on final. The two main things I want to concentrate what we're talking about today is first of all, simplicity is about being focused on the area you're controlling. The area you control here from the 10-mile final to whatever goes around here, and make sure that that is your focus area, and everything that happens around is stuff that happens around, and let all the traffic come to you instead of going all the way around the scope and talk too much to people. Only give instructions that you need to give. Only say things that make sense to say. Um, I see a lot of people that are very afraid of sitting on final, but the very same people that are afraid of final also don't really give the respect to the position as it requires. So that's the first thing, is being very structured, be very disciplined. And the next thing is that you have to prepare yourself, especially when things are not like a sweatbox scenario. So, just gonna open here my things here. So, first of all, it's important that we prepare ourselves. And this means logging on and just checking everything. I made this sheet. This is a tool. You can use it if you like. You can also choose not to use it. Um, Somebody's talking. Okay. This is just a tool to put in some things about what you can expect. It's a tool. You can use it if you like. You can choose not to use it. The point is, before you start the session, you gotta inform yourself of what conditions am I looking at? Where is the wind coming from? If the wind is coming from a certain angle, we have to look at differences depending on where the wind is coming from. For example, I know Kenneth had the nice experience a while ago, and I had the same experience. It's like here, where the wind is coming from the west. At I think it was at was it Kenneth, was it 40 knots or something? It came from like this up in the altitude, and if you just do this without preparing, without having the respect of seeing what can I expect, what kind of things do I need to be aware of today, then you are really getting severely punished. Um, Here we had quite a few sections where airplanes on base had a 40, 45, 50 knots difference. So always be ready to inform yourself. Okay, the wind's coming from this angle. What will this mean for me? Well, it's gonna mean quite a few different things. It's gonna mean that people on this space gonna have a lot of tailwind. People on this space gonna have a lot of headwind. People that are gonna turn on final here, they're gonna have a huge amount of headwind. Actually, they're gonna have more headwind than when they're lined up. So there's all these kind of things. So just have the respect of getting a little bit of a feeling for what is actually going to happen today. It doesn't take a long time. You just look at the wind, you apply the standard formula, which is going to be that for up in the altitude, it's going to be 30 degrees higher, 30 degrees more to the north, so plus 30 degrees, and it's going to more or less double in strength. This is a pretty easy thing you can aim for. And this is also what this sheet will tell you. For example, you put in this here 24020. Okay, it's going to tell you what are recommended speeds. Are there some things that are going to be different? For example, here you're going to have a lot of tailwind on base. You're going to have a lot of headwind on the other base. So just have that idea. Um, and once you then sit there, and we're going to look at a few situations here from this scenario. This one was recorded by Sonic a few weeks ago, so thank you for Sonic. We're not going to, of course, point out mistakes. We're going to look at situations where we can talk about them and see what could have been done here. What was the consequence of some of the choices? Avoid these complex commands. Avoid headings that you don't know where it's going to take you up. So the same way as last time. I'm just going to see if I can find the video here that looks like this. I don't know if the video will follow along. Otherwise, please. I don't know if anybody can hear the sounds. So just gonna look at a few different things, and actually gonna start here from the very beginning, where again this is the first thing we always encounter. I don't know exactly why this guy is turning this way, but it could very easily be because he took a wrong turn. We don't know, but if we just say that he took a wrong turn, we have to be able to deal with bad pilots once in a while. We can't use them as an excuse. We just can learn how to handle them. If they need to be sent away back to approach or asked to be disconnect, but we need to know how to deal with these pilots. Um, and Kenneth, since you're such a experienced controller, what would you do in this scenario? Sass is gonna come here. He's gonna be turned into a 6 mile final. What would you do with this guy? Incredible. That was exactly what I would have said as well. And this is something that everybody can really learn from. This is one of the things that comes with experience, but there's no need to give him heading, come back. Look at where he is. He's there. If he turns, is he gonna be hitting this guy? No. Make it easy. One instruction, left 010, cleared ILS. And it can be done fast because he has to turn all the way around. And this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about simplicity. Um, yeah. Yeah. So you say a tight, I mean, like it would be a little separation? Or what do you mean? Yeah. No, you think you're looking at it wrong. This is the 04. So so he's gonna come in at this heading. And that's such an easy one instruction and you're done. And this makes such a difference. Um, yeah. Instead of whatever's gonna happen, turning on base or turning on final, and then before you know it, it's difficult to know where he's gonna end up. And then in the end, he comes at a kind of an odd angle. That's again with if pilots are not the best, then get them in as soon as you can with as simple instructions as possible. I'm just gonna fast forward a little bit. Please stop me if I'm being a little bit too fast here. But I have to scroll a little bit in because it's a 3 hour long session and we're obviously not gonna sit here for 3 hours. Let's see, 17. So one thing that you always need to look when we're talking about preparing yourself, especially here, obviously I'm talking to the younger controllers and the more junior controllers. Make sure you are aware of the wind. Now this is a day with not much wind, but always just be aware to check if you're seeing something that you don't like. 250, that's perfect from 230, so it's about a 20 knots tailwind. Nice and easy, no problem. Um, but use the time while there's low complexity, or even before you log on, if there's somebody else sitting there, just to sit for a little bit and just inform yourself of how does the picture look, how does everything look. 252 versus 260. Okay, he's a little bit on the base and he has a little bit of a lower speed, but these things are good to do. Now, this session only really starts a little bit further over because it's As we all know, from 7 to 8, not much is happening. Um, so it basically starts here. And this is a little bit what we talked about as well in regards to one of the things that happens often is being a little bit too conservative in regards to taking the turns in very, very small steps. In this case, you have KLM 1930 up there in the north. And can you hear can everybody hear what goes on in the video as well, or is that muted? That's muted. Then in that case, just allow me to change the streaming video, because I think if I change the window, then it will be like this now. Can you hear now? Is there any sound now? Uh, I'm not sure. I'm not. Also share application audio. That's gotta be it. Yeah. All right. So in this situation, we're turning KLM base here. Now, if I was to ask, for example, you, sir, and you've been sitting on final, can he be given a final turn right away in regards to the separation there is here? Yeah, KLM in regards to Swiss 4 Charlie Bravo. Does he have enough space to go direct to final? It will take the time to make turn. If you look at the way the vectoring goes in, even if he was flying straight to the ILS now, he's still gonna have pretty much this amount of space here, and he still has to make the turn. So when it's about learning, seeing these things as well in regards to when the space is there, don't waste the time, get him in. And even if you miscalculate, there's still plenty of options of delaying somebody after. Um, so in this case, KLM could easily have turned to final. The problem is, of course, now it continues, and then you're ending up with quite a lot of separation now. And now suddenly you see your final is already 16 miles. It goes so fast. It goes so fast with getting the final too long. Um, so next time we come here, I want to talk a little bit about some are like to do the modified base. Um, this is a great thing. This is a great tool to do the modified base. Here for Swiss is the turning final, or turning to the set, and then you'll see Scandinavia 1475. The guy here, he will get a modified base. That means he's gonna get something in this direction, if I remember correctly. And I guess it's gonna come in a little bit. So he's gonna come a little bit there. And again, this is for you guys who don't have so much experience on the precision yet. What we can say about this with the modified base, it can be a great tool. It can be a useful tool if you know how to use it. But don't make the mistake of thinking the airplanes are coming in faster because they're doing a modified base. Airplanes will only come in a certain amount of miles behind this guy. Whether you get him in like this or you get him in like this, it makes no difference. So don't think that this is a way to get him in faster. There can be some reasons why modified bases can work, but you also have to be very aware of the. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I see it now. Because when I brief the application and not the screen, then it doesn't show the overlay that I'm drawing on the same side. I do apologize for that. Then in that case, we have to survive. I'm afraid we have to survive then without the. It's gonna do that. We have to survive without the audio, so that because I think if I draw now, hopefully it will work. If I draw now, can people see it? Okay, good. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so the no matter if you used a modified base to go like this, or you do a regular base to go like this, the result will still be the same. He needs to be a certain amount of miles behind this guy. So don't make the mistake of thinking that a modified base will get airplanes in faster. There can be reason to use it, but don't use it just to use it. And there's another thing that not all of you may consider about the modified base. If you turn modified base instead of a regular base, on a regular base, if you forget him, he's just going to go through the localizer and you turn him back on the other side. On a modified base, you get double punishment because for every second you forget to turn him, he keeps going further and further out. So on a base, when you're forgetting for 5 seconds, he just goes from there to there, and you just got to do a little bit of a wider turn. You don't lose a lot of track mileage. On a modified base, he goes from there to there, and now suddenly you're losing track miles at an increased rate of what you would do on a normal base. This is also why when you do the modified bases, be alert. Don't have a million modified bases at the same time, and be very aware when you do the modified base not to forget these airplanes because it goes very fast for them to be so far behind that you risk um, that you risk getting into exactly that issue. Um, an issue that actually, if I remember correctly, happens here. This is not a lot of seconds late. That's getting 1475 is turning. Yet it still ends up giving him almost 6 miles of separation to the next one. And just by that you made your final 2 to 3 miles longer. And it happened so easily, it happened just like that. Um, the next thing that comes, that's about when I'm talking about simplicity. I'm just gonna scroll back a little bit, and I'm gonna talk about German cargo that comes down here. Now, German cargo, German cargo checks in. Now, unfortunately, I can't hear the audio, but I can say that. Sorry? Yeah? Ah, excellent, super. So that took a long time. That's a lot of time, a lot of effort that's being put into one airplane who you don't really need to do much about at this point. Not with 3 airplanes on the ILS and another one on a modified base. Now, he's getting 3 instructions. Descent 3000, left heading 260, speed 200. I normally always say, never give 3 instructions at the same time because 95 of the pilots, they will they will mess up and ask for say something again. I don't know if you guys can concur with that from your experience on the network, but I find at least that extremely often when you give 3 instructions, he misses one or asks you to tell the whole thing again, and it uses so much time and so much energy. Now, Jesper, since you're sitting here, now I have a little thing for you. With these 3 instructions that he gets, can you see something about the nature of these 3 instructions that seems contradictory? When I'm talking about simplicity in regards to, yeah, okay, what's wrong with the speed and the descent? Difficult, but possible nonetheless. That's actually another thing I'm looking for. Does anybody want to kick in that has an idea what I might be talking about? Nobody? Kom nu, Jonsen. No. Mhm. That is indeed what I'm talking about. But and in general, why are we giving a shortcut and then reducing speed at the same time? So what's the purpose of reducing the speed if we're not want to give ourselves more time, what is the purpose of giving a shortcut if we then at the same time wants to delay him? So my point more in this is not so much on the speed restriction. If you need to give a speed restriction, you need to give a speed restriction. But I would argue that it's very difficult to foresee right here, right now, what implication that heading and that speed restriction is going to have. What is he aiming for? There's no doubt that getting 1475 is going to be ahead. I don't think anybody will try to get Lufthansa Cargo in before Scandinavian 1475. So why are we putting all this, giving a heading, giving an early speed restriction for something that we can't possibly foresee? Instead, what we could have done instead is focusing on Scandinavian 1475 and make sure that he gets in. Again, in this case, you could easily argue just to turn him in right away, but instead, now we're ending up putting Scandinavian 1475 on another gap. So again, instead of simplicity, I recommend let the traffic come to you. If you have a specific reason for this shortcut, great, because there's space. But if there's not really any specific reason for the shortcut, then there's not really that much to do. And I'm gonna go 30 seconds ahead of time. So now we're here. What did this situation bring? Did it solve anything? It just created another session with Postman. Could we have seen that coming? That would have been difficult. But imagine if he had just stayed on his arrival. Then he would probably have been, what can we say? Would have been around here at this point, and you would have had the perfect setup. But sorry? Yeah, you would have the perfect zipper. And this would have been difficult to foresee. But again, it supports the statement, just let the traffic come to you. And then when you see and you can predict how are the traffic going to be in relation to each other, then do something. It's much easier than trying to do all sort of exotic headings. And you end up in a situation here where it's not a bad situation. I mean, it's a perfectly normal situation, but it adds complexity, especially if you're inexperienced and looking for the simplest way. Um, so yeah, what's going to happen is that one is going to be turned in. Again, trust the system. It's like he's already, as you can see here, by the time he's turning, he's already pretty much too far. Where he should have turned, see if I can do, sorry, is as we talked about last time, when he's there, when he's 3 miles hitting the target, that's a good time to turn. And by waiting this amount of time, then you are ending up with having a already having quite a bit of a gap. Now this gap can of course be saved by doing exactly what is being done here. Give him the turn in right away to make up as much track miles as you possibly can, of course. Now what heading are we going to give Lufthansa Cargo? Does anybody want to give a heading that might be good? You say 010. Anybody have anything else? Again, there's nothing really wrong with giving a base here. It's an extra instruction because I mean he's already there. So by the time he turns the base, he's going to be having to go to the final anyway, or be shooting through. But as Jesper says, this is going to fit quite okay. This is going to be fitting nicely to 3 miles. Also because of the way the headings, and he's going to lose speed as well Lufthansa Cargo. And if God forbid that it goes just a little bit too tight, you just continue him and then turn him back. But if you wait too long, especially as we talked about again on a modified base, it is gonna punish you double. So don't hesitate too long on these kind of things. Just look, take a quick decision, and don't be worried about doing it. In the end, it's another opportunity, as you see here. It's another opportunity to be a little bit late on this guy, and then the mileage keeps running up. Try to do everything as simple and as direct as you can. If you see something works, oh, sorry. If you see something is working, then go for it. No need to micro-instruct. Just be consequential. No need to just be brave. Of course, it's mainly I'm talking to the new guys here. Um, so he comes in. This is something that I am pretty sure that those of you who are C1s and have been construct final don't have a problem with, but for the newer S3s, now he's gonna give a speed to Lufthansa Cargo. Um, 1-4. Yeah, he's gonna give a speed and then he's gonna wait until he responds before pulling a vector, deciding on the vector for the next airplane. Sorry, actually, it's because there was another time. This is an example actually of how to do it. So when he calls back, don't wait with the vector. Listen to how when Lufthansa Cargo reports back, he's already ahead and ready with the next vector. There starts the readback. The mind, while hearing what he's saying, is already ready for the next thing. In this case, getting EC4370 on the base. There you go, 310. Now we know where he is. And we can see how they're intersecting each other as well. Did anybody hear what Lufthansa Cargo read back? So it was a little bit of a peculiar thing. And this here come back to my point on there's no need to make up fancy words. So so what delays the whole thing a little bit is the instruction of when established on the glide slope contact tower 118105. And we all do it. We all like to be smooth, like to 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 sound good on the frequency. But when you think about what it means, what does it mean when established on the glide slope contact tower? Well, if it doesn't get established on the glide slope, does it just stay with you then, or um, well, that's not really a condition because, well, what if he doesn't get established? What does he do then? Does he just then keep staying, and then he just stays on approach? But why? So why not either wait or contact tower 118105? If he doesn't catch the glide slope, he's gonna go around anyway. Or he's gonna start descending afterwards because he's realizing he's missing the glide slope. Um, but even these small seconds, they do matter. But anyway, it's not a big thing anyway. Nej, nej, jeg har stadigvæk. Jeg har den bare lige kørt et øjeblik. Okay, so if I now ask, Bartek, you've been so quiet so far. Where is your focus after this? Now Easy gotten what? Are you controlling? Okay, then you're not the right one. Well, anybody who would like to jump in, where's the focus after this final turn? Preferably maybe one of the less experienced ones. Nobody wants. So Rob, you okay? It. Yeah. After the Easy comes in, who are we looking at after Easy? Yeah, exactly. So we want to be careful not to give headings, maintain heading to this guy, or worry about this guy checking in. As soon as we give him the final turn, we are immediately ready for Virgin because he's already, if we're looking at this, he's already gonna be late because by the time Easy turns, he's already way past. So Virgin actually needs a turn right away. That's why I also try to advocate control on this area so we can all the time be in the moment for when we need to turn people, when we need to manage the speed restrictions, all these kind of things. Yeah, please do. Yeah, I could not agree more. So what Kenneth is talking about here is, well, I mean, we can even look at it. I mean, these guys are basically lined up now. His turn for base is already way past what it should have been because as soon as Easy go, Virgin he needs to turn now. Virgin will turn. I mean, his turn radius should be the same because they have similar speeds. But he's already so far past that you can choose to give a base heading if you want to make absolutely sure, because I think we can agree that it's a little bit of an odd scenario if you don't have the experience, but you need to be ready for, as you give him this base heading, he will need to be turned final right away because already here we're actually a little bit late on it. But don't get lost in giving speed restrictions to people, especially because why are we giving him a speed restriction? Because he has plenty of space to catch up. This guy, he's not going to do anything. He's just going to come in. Easy, he doesn't need to do anything. Well, maybe he needs a present heading later on to avoid him turning in. But our focus is here, and our focus is on what do we need to give Virgin. So when other things that are happening with the speed restriction 5-5 Juliet, and now Austin Troy and Foxtrot comes, then we're even further away. Now Virgin has passed Easy. So now we also know what do we know? Yes, but now we're turning Virgin base. What do we know is going to happen? The gap. The gap is going to grow. The gap is going to be big. So this can happen to all of us, and this is not something you can avoid. We've all been there, and sometimes you just get caught up a little bit. Maybe there was a little bit of a conflict, or you were planning something, and now this happens. This is not a problem. What you just need to do is to manage that gap and see if you can get something in between. Now, as Virgin gets his base turn heading, comes here. Now we can see there's kind of a nice gap. So this would be a great way to get somebody in between. And this can potentially really change your final by so much, because if you don't get anybody in, then you need Alpine behind Virgin, you need Austrian behind Alpine, and I don't know if you guys can get the image, the picture of now that this is going to be a very, very long final all of a sudden. You're going to be out by 20 miles all of a sudden. Now, if you can get somebody in there in between, that can help so much because it is the spacing you get between the airplanes that is going to deciding how long is that final going to get. Now, is it difficult to do to get somebody in between? Um, I would say not. It's easy you just have to be able to trust your, you have to trust these things about when to turn people base. Now, as Virgin here is being turned, one can argue already here, as we're turning Virgin, we are realizing this is going to be a little bit, ooh, that's going to be a gap. And this is going to be lead to a very long final now, when everybody has to go behind Virgin. So, what can we do, Jesper? You could turn Alpine. So you want to turn them already now? Say stop. Say stop when it's time. Yeah. And this is a great way of doing it, but don't forget, this only works when you're turning the guy in correct time. If you're turning him too early, this guy, it's not a problem because, well, you can let him go through and turn him back. If you turn him too late and you already have Virgin turning inbound like he has now, you have the gap you have. And the gap might be fine, but if this guy goes too late, then he's gonna go too close to the Virgin. And that's why look at it and decide the right time. Now, to continue, but if now you forget to do it, and now you're here, now it's too late. What do you do now? Yeah, but he's still gonna crash right into Virgin, huh? Exactly. Yeah. Alpine is not gonna get in now. He's gonna turn base and he's gonna be probably around there. He's gone. Don't waste more time on him. Oh, and then you just give him a little bit more to the right. Oh, where is he? There, there. Austin Trion Foxtrot, right turn for base. If you want to give him a 10-degree less space just to get a little bit of separation, yeah, you can be okay. You're still fine. Even if you give him this heading, you'll be fine. Um, but the point was more when the cause is lost, don't waste more energy on it because once it's not happening anymore, it's not happening anymore. It's there. However, so in this case, people go in. So where would Austrian 3-1 Foxtrot have been if we had gotten Alpine in? Then he would have turned base here. That to me looks like a pretty regular Tuesday evening base turn. But how much difference can make? Okay, this of course didn't help things, but it's ending up Alpine coming out on close to a 20-mile final, even though we were able to squeeze one in. Um, or it could have been Walker as well out there. But so the final comes very fast. So don't be, for you who are relatively new at the S3, don't be afraid of jumping in. Don't linger at a situation. If you see the situation with Virgin develops, go to Alpine, give him the turn. Does it fit? Yeah, boom, turn. If you're hesitant, now it doesn't work. Look for the next option. Get him in. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and then you haven't lost anything. If Austria, because then Austria will try again. Then you haven't filled the gap anyway, so then you have nothing to lose. Um, so where were we? 144. I need to be a little bit faster here. Um, tak for det. Sådan der, det kan I nu. Ja. Uh-huh. Altså snakker du om, at Ah, 250, det er også en lille smule aggressivt. Jo, 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 du er nødt til at kigge på, deres indicator airspeed, fordi det er dem, de har jo stadigvæk den mængde, de skal slå ned. 260 er meget højt, også fordi, ja, altså, det vil du ikke, men det vil du have svært ved at slippe afsted med på Vectors. Fordi de slår langsommere fra 250 til 220, end de gør fra 220 til 180. Fordi de har flaps til at hjælpe sig. Øhm, du får, du får flyene. Hvad siger du? Mhm. Jo, jo, men det kommer, kan man så også komme til. Altså man kan sige 250, når du drejer base, så er 250 for meget. 220, 200, jo jo, men nu snakker jeg til Jesper. Nu snakker jeg lige til Jesper til at starte med. En ting ad gangen. Så Jesper, først har vi 250, når de drejer base. Det vil være for meget. Der vil piloter retmæssigt også. Det vil jeg også gøre. Se, det er så lige højt nok. Vi er nødt til at slå ned. Fordi selvom du måske har en vind, jamen piloterne, de har jo en delta-fart. Det vil sige, de skal fra 250 ned til, hvor de kan sætte flaps. Og den vil jo være det samme, uanset hvad vinden er. Det kan være, det går egentlig ikke specielt meget hurtigere med at slå ned, eller fordi der er noget vind, der hjælper dig. Men du får dem i 220 alligevel. Når de så kommer ind på finalen, så er 220, altså man kan sige, jeg plejer at sige 220, 12 mil. Det er sådan, der skal de ned. Det kan være 220 indtil omkring 12 mil. Kommer du længere ind derfra, så skal de til at have ned i fart, så de kan få lov, så de har mulighed for at konfigurere flaps. Fordi de har en delta-fart. De skal fra 220 ned til deres final approach speed. Og det er lige meget, hvor meget vind der er. Så er det stadig den samme delta-fart. Øhm, ja, det skal de ikke have lov til. Ikke når der er meget vind. Ja, ja. Sorry Rob. Apologies. Um, yeah. So, but basically, oh yes, but just to finish off, it's also being a little bit exotic with stuff that's not really needed. I've made a point that going 180 when you get them handed over, that will create issues, and it will if you have not specifically asked everybody around you to slow the rate, slow everything. But 250, but also what we are getting people in with, it's it's planned for that they're coming in with 220, and then you're slowing them down when you're turning them on base. But putting them at 250 is it may help you in some cases. There are cases to argue for it, but when it's busy, it will hurt you more than it will help you. Mm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but it's not that it cannot work, but people will probably ask for that speed reduction. I have had almost no pilots asking for a speed restriction when they were for speed reduction when they were on downwind at 220. I don't think I had a single one. I'm not. There's no problem. If you keep no more than 230 on downwind, if you keep no more than 220 on base, if you give them 180 by the time they reach 10 to 12 miles, you're fine. Sorry, Rob, what were you saying? Um, I think I'm gonna come to it later on in this thing as well. But in general, I'm very much against giving speed restrictions just for the sake of giving speed restrictions. And the problem with doing this, left hitting 070 cleared ILS speed 180, is it's only once he's done that turn and you see where his vector lines up with the next guy that you will really for sure know what's the distance. And I assure you, these 10 seconds while he's turning, where he kept 20 knots more than usual, that's not going to change anything. That's less than zero point 0.1 of a mile difference. So, but once he then lines up and he gets all the headwind, or he lines up and you realize, oh, okay, he's actually 4.5 miles behind. That was not really my calculation. Then he's already at 180, and now you slowed everybody behind him to 180 as well, because they are governed by the guy who flies ahead of them. So where you could have had 200, and now everybody behind him flies 200. Now you forced everybody behind him to fly 180 or extra separation in order to not catch up, because you wanted to give the 180 with the turn. But there's really no need. That's my honest opinion. Once you can see, do I need more speed? Do I need less speed? Then you take action. I'll come to it in a little bit. Um, because I think there's something about there as well. Actually, I think it's the one coming up now, to be honest. 150, 115. We're going a little bit ahead here. So I think this is actually happening what you're talking about, Rob. So there's he's getting a little bit close, this guy. So they're getting a little bit close. Now the instinct comes of reducing this guy to 180. Now you're putting in a speed difference, and that is not necessarily a problem in itself. But obviously this is not going to be solved by a 20 knot speed difference. This is going to be solved by, as I'm pretty sure it will be solved, by just letting him a little bit longer and then turning him in so that you have the spacing. Because a 20 knot speed difference is not gonna solve if he turns final now. Because then they're gonna have 2 miles. That's not gonna be enough. So there's nothing wrong with a speed reduction. But what I'm trying to go a little bit against is the speed reduction to 180 right away. Because now you've already committed to speed differential that is going to create more gap than what they're gonna initially have. So what I would have done in this case is just keep him at 200. You know, you're not gonna need to catch up on him because, well, they're already very low in separation, so I'm just gonna turn him in at the right moment. And if I get a little bit too much, then I can slow down KLM a little bit earlier if I wanna do the gap now. There's not really any need for that. But what happens now if there comes a little bit of delay because you may hesitate a little bit, or priority might be a little bit at the wrong place. Do you see where this is going, Rob? Now he's turning. Now he's 4.7. And now he's coming in. Now he has 4.6, 4.7, almost 5 miles. But but the issue is exactly you don't have, you already reduced him. Now what you can do is ask him to please speed up, which is possible, but not very nice towards somebody who wants to do a realistic flight, because it might involve flap retraction and all kind of stuff. You can do it, but you shouldn't unless you really have to. So um, in this case, there's still the spacing, but you have 5.2 there, you got 3.3 there. Imagine if you had 200, he would just have been a little bit more right in between, and that would have been even better. So you could have just pushed people in a little bit more. Um, And there comes a situation later on which is similar, where it actually ends up that these two ends up having a conflict, where here there is a huge gap. So I'm not saying don't slow people down, but get yourself an overview first of how is it going to look? How are their vectors? Are they close? Are they not close? And then manage. Now, see here, for example, if we just go back, so he has 180, but Nordic 901, he's been kept at 200, which I would say correctly done, because now he lines up. You see, okay, how much do you have? Okay, there's a little bit of a gap, so then I can just keep it going until we have what I want, and then we give him 180. And in that way, you're keeping the pile moving on. This is something that's, of course, a little bit more complex, so to speak. But getting a feeling for the management of these things and not being too fast with getting the speed down will help, especially in high wind situations. This is easy situations, 177, 196. But when it was like yesterday, when people had a final approach speed of 100 knots because there was so much wind there last Monday, then it's that can easily become an issue. So I'm just gonna go a little bit. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Please be open to comment on things as well. Don't hold yourself back, please. Kenneth, what do you use as a pointer when you're turning people from a modified base straight to final? What do you use to figure out when to turn them? Uh huh. Yeah. Yeah, on the modified. Because modified are just a little bit more tricky to really get that, I think at least, that kind of nice touch for exactly when do we turn in. Um, at least find it a little bit trickier. I don't know if you find it trickier than the regular base, but just getting that right turn in. My yeah, easily. Here they come from the same side, Scandinavia 910 and Lufthansa Cargo, so the problem's not going to be there, of course. But yeah, the wind is a completely different thing to take into account as well. Um, the only thing we say about modified base are normally you have to turn earlier than you think because they have to do a bigger turn than they normally have from base, and secondly because they're still tracking outbound. So the delay there is between you giving the instruction and them commencing the turn, that compounds as well. So I would say already here I would have given the instruction left 070 cleared ILS. I don't know if it's a little bit on the early side, but I think that's probably what I would have done. And again, if you see that they already passed each other, like here, no need to spend two instructions first going base and then going on a very late final turn. Make everything easy. Um, yeah, go ahead. No, no, no worries, man. Oh, am I that? Am I that boring? Oh, jeez. Um, so this is pretty much what we talked about already. Here, a situation happens where Scammer 1509 is gonna do this infamous turning after doping, which is super annoying. And you do the only thing you really can do in this situation, which is to take action and make sure he turns away. This is what's being done. And that is just inevitably gonna create this problem where the guy you should have had turn, well, you haven't been able to give him that turn because that's you were preoccupied with this guy not doing what he was supposed to do. And this happens, and we all know it, and it's super annoying. But it's better to just solve the situation afterwards than being frustrated about it and looking at what can we do. Because obviously, is if we're looking at this and we okay, if we're getting the Air France in here and then SAS behind Air France and then SAS behind SAS, we're almost running out of airspace. So yes, but if I now turn to you again, what can you do as a plan of action to resolve this situation? Okay. Yeah, he's already going that way. They're exactly. They're lining up there already. There's no need to hesitate because we just take whatever is gonna give us the closest possible spacing, and that's right there, right there. So no hesitation, right turn for base. There he is, turned in. What do you do from there? 070 cleared ILS. What do you do then? Okay. Would anybody have done it differently? I'll tell you that's a no. What you can do is, what I would do is just as well on top of it, just once you're turning the F-Hans in, get a QD mic between F-Hans and Scandinavian there and see what is my what is the gap I have there. Can I get 1509 in the gap? He's not necessarily a newbie, this guy. He just put the wrong thing into FMC, but doesn't mean he doesn't know how to turn. Um, of course, this is something to evaluate afterward. Is it viable to get SAS in? Maybe it's not. Then he just goes behind Air France. Nothing we can do about it. Maybe there is a gap that will open up for somebody else later on. But yes, this exercise is all about not hesitating in when we need to do something. When we see we have the issue is right there. That's going to create issues. What can we do? Hey, this guy, he's just like a perfect right turn. And it makes so much easier when everybody is on headings we like. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's let me play the situation here without sound. Here's turning in. That's making the best of a situation. He would have slotted in quite nicely. That would have worked. Yeah, that would actually work pretty beautifully. You might have to do something with Swiss about getting it maybe a little bit down in speed, but absolutely. Is there an opportunity? There is an opportunity. So if you are, you want to help yourself, and you want to help yourself. Yeah. Do we want to make life a little bit extra tough for this guy that turns wrong, or do we want to make life a little bit tougher for the seven other controllers around us? Um, indeed. Um, it would require, do I dare say, a controller of Kenneth's experience to see this. But yes, there would have been the space. The space would have been just nice, especially because the Swiss actually happened to not be cleared ILS, so he was actually continuing in that heading, and that just makes it even easier because uh, this one, I mean, the gap here, that's perfect. The way he turned, there's a perfect gap there. He will easily slot behind. Actually, the main question on this would more be in terms of would Swiss and SAS get too close to each other? But Swiss is actually not even cleared ILS, so he's continuing up there anyway. So you actually have the freedom to just then turn him in when you see it fit. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we we that's not necessarily true. It can also just be that it's an honest mistake if they don't know any of our briefing materials or don't have our charts and so, oh well, it's Copenhagen, I'll wing it. And then they see, I mean, it's gotten even worse now because you can put in the star and then you can see the star into dopim and then you can select the dopim transition. Jesus, you don't even have to remove a discontinuity, so it's even worse. So they can still be responsive pilots without doing it. Yeah, and yeah, yeah. And one point I would make is if he's that bad that he can't do this, I promise you, getting him in like this is gonna be equally a challenge. It's not gonna be easier because of that. It can be. Maybe one day when you get as big balls as Kenneth, then you will manage. Well, we can let's listen. Listen. Let's see. Let's hear him. We check in. Checks in. Does he sound good? He's British. How can you not trust a British guy? He's gone. He's gone. So he sounds perfect. He sounds perfectly fine. Now, anyways, I am taking too much time. Um, at 204 comes. We talked a little bit about when to give a modified base. Um, when you give a modified base, I've talked about it earlier, they don't get in faster. Maybe I hope that Kenneth or Mikkel can maybe help me a little bit on this, maybe with some other situations where modified base is useful. But I mainly find a modified base useful in these situations, not this far out, but where the two guys are lined up with each other. To me, it feels a little bit easier that if we can play for a second that they're here instead, that one guy can go like this, then you also, because you kind of changes the gap between these two that are completely lined up with each other, and it makes for a little bit of a simpler overview because then this guy can come in and this guy kind of takes a regular base and comes in. I find that easier. I don't know. What do you guys normally do with regards to the modified base? When do you use them? Mhm. Yeah. Mm. Now, yeah, that's a different thing that we also need to address later on is the tendency of S3 controllers to hand over to final on a vector. You're not allowed to hand over on a vector unless it's been coordinated. I think we had a talk on Monday about this. That everybody must be cleared back on the star unless it has been specifically approved by final. But there will come a little bit of an update about this because there seem to be some misunderstanding concerning that. Uh, Kenneth, do you use it in any other instances? Eller Daniel for den sags skyld. Jakob. Gud, Jakob har også. No? Okay. I don't know if you all understood what Mikkel was saying about this, but I do think the main thing to take away from it is it's about making it into a picture that you can relate to. Mikkel is doing like this with getting one there and then getting one there because it turns into an image that he knows. Wasn't that what you're saying? 3.5 miles? Okay, so this guy turns here, and then by the time this guy's here, then you turn this guy here. Yeah, okay. But no, but still, the point stands. It's something that creates an image that you find easy to control, and this is what it's all about. It's about finding something where it's easy to control. Anyways, it's so when you have this situation, this is a situation where you can use it. If you just turn them both on base, it's not really too difficult either. What I recommend, I think what I wrote in the material as well, is you turn the first one base. When he's starting to turn, then you turn the other one base, because that's gonna give this kind of offset here about 2 to 3 miles, and that's gonna make it very nice when they're turning final to judge on how are they in relation to each other. So first the first guy turns, and then the second guy turns. Now they're not completely there on base, but it gives a much easier image to see. Now as this guy turns in, well, how is this guy now relating to the first guy? It's an easy thing to see. So when you have these that comes as exactly the same point, and unless you want to use the modified base, you can also use the regular base by turning the one guy in when the first guy is turning, turn the second guy in, and create this natural gap in between them. But it gives a nice opportunity of seeing how they are in relation to each other. And with the wind, there is a little bit with the wind, but remember the problem with these for the crosswind, it mainly comes when you have long intercepts. When you have these short intercepts, the wind is not gonna matter as much because they are pretty much turning final right away. Hopefully, that was something that made just a little bit of sense. Um, so, um, I feel like we're already spending quite a long time on this, so I'm gonna try to skip a few things here. Um, yeah, over FedEx over 727. Oh, 724. Yeah, you mean the difference on the speed? Yeah, you actually could. There you go, 220, 200. So there's a. Uh, yeah, and this is in the relatively calm conditions. This is with 7 knots. Imagine taking this to 24, 25 knots, and remember that it's doubling. So this probably has, let's say, yeah, what can we say? Maybe 15 knots of difference. There's about 30 knots difference. Try with, if you have this, but with 45 knots, then you will have a 90 knot difference with the same speed. That's when you have to start being really careful and being really prepared for these things, because you can have an enormous difference. Um, yeah, good point. And again, there comes a few different situations where I don't really want to spend the time going all through them, but I can only recommend just trust put a little bit of trust in the system. Put a little bit of trust that these things they line up, that these things work. Try to be aware of the headings you give. You should never give a heading that you don't have a specific reasoning for. If you don't have a specific reason, then your heading should be 130310. If you want to have a 5 or 10 degree one way or another, it's fine if you have a reason for it. But suddenly giving headings like you go this, or instead of turning, you're turning base and you give it like kind of a weird base without there being any reasoning for it. Try to really cut away on these headings and these instructions that there are no need for. It should optimally be as clean as possible with the base turns, with the final turns, and these turns you have to know. You cannot set a final if you don't know heading 130, heading 310, heading 010, heading 070. If you have to look these up every time you're turning people, then it's too early for you to sit on final. You should only sit on final once you have absolutely this taken care of, because you don't want to spend time thinking about that heading. If you want to go 5 degrees left, 5 degrees right, then you can pull the vector as you like. Also remember that updating the tag is fine. Updating the tag, except for speed and altitude. This with getting them cleared approach, all this stuff, I don't consider it a priority. Making sure that the next controller is correct if departing or arrival tower, it's not a priority, because nobody's going to see it. You're going to hand them over to tower and they are going to be not even looked at anyway because they're down on the ground radar. So if you want to update them with a cleared approach, stuff like this, you're welcome to do so. Don't make it a priority beyond what is operationally needed, which is going to be to make sure your speeds are updated. Also, if you give this guy 160 to 4 miles final contact tower, if you want to update it to 160, you're free to do so if you want to remember it. But again, there's nobody else who's going to see it than you, and you just pushed him away. So unless you can't remember that you gave him 160 to 4, then think about where the priorities are. Not to give it, but if there's more important things, do that. Yeah, there's a very interesting situation that comes here at 2 hours 13. I don't want to skip that because that's actually a very interesting situation here. So quality, he will turn on final, and then SAS will need to turn down, need to turn final as well. This is what we talked about a few times, that quality comes in. Now we already should have SAS turning in. We can see that one is already far away. We got to get him in. And remember, again, the modified base, it punishes you double every second you forget to get that turn. We've been talking about it already before, but let's talk about it again. Now this has happened, and now we have too much gap. Where do we look? What can we do? Alpine. Does everybody follow that? Where, if we look at where we are, Alpine, where is he? He's there, so he's not quite lined up yet. So we even have time. Wonderful. Now, I want to show this situation because it's actually very interesting, because the thought process that comes here is actually a very good thought process, but it gets corrupted a little bit by doubt. So I just want to let it play to let you show what happens. So that's why you want to turn Alpine. That's very nicely lined up. And you want to take the QD mic from Scandinavian to quality. Remember, for those of you who don't know, you can just press Alt Q and you'll get the QD mic tool up. And then you can see, do I have space for somebody there? Now there's a little bit of thought about Alpine. See, oh, now it does it. Now it's being done. Completely, you see there, we got 6.7. It's not a lot, but we have plenty of options of increasing that because SAS is still turning. So that can be done. Yes, but what can you say about Alpine though now? Can you turn it right? Anybody would not do it? You, I think that's also a very valid point. You can do both things. I think that probably Kenneth is right that 0-1-0 will take him in. There's also no problem in turning him base because as long as you're aware of that he might need the final right away. What I'm trying to convey is the respect of remembering, well, I can get this guy in, but remember, this guy is not the one that's creating issues. This is not the spacing that we're going to create issues. This is the spacing between this guy and this guy. That's the one that can create issues if we don't do this correctly. So as you turn Alpine in on base, be ready for that you don't want to delay him too much because 6.7, you don't have a huge amount of margin. You have a little bit. This is going to maybe turn to 7 miles. So you have a little bit of margin, but not a whole lot. The, yeah, it's a good thought. However, what is his ground speed going to do when he's turn? When you look at the with wind, what is his ground speed going to do as he turns base? It's gonna decrease by if you have 15 knots now up there. So he's gonna go down to 200 versus 185 in quality. So it's not gonna be that bad actually. And in these small confined spaces. Yeah, but when we have these kind of winds, this is not what's gonna matter. Oh, you see there, Sonic actually very correctly thought about it, and then also came to the conclusion this might be a little bit too close. He's thinking about it, so he does something very interesting instead. He goes straight to the next one, which I think is a super move. Okay, this might okay, as I say, a very routine, I say routinier, a very experienced controller like Kenneth may know that you can get it in. If you don't have the big balls of Kenneth, and or now this is might actually be an issue. He goes straight to the other guy because in the end we don't care if it's Alpine or if Easy that comes in this gap, as long as somebody comes in. And that I think is a very nice move. Unfortunately, something else happens, which is a familiar face checks in. So Sonic, what has happened now in regard to Easy 1 for Alpha? So they came to my attention. The problem is now that now the Easy is basically lost his window as well. Um, and I think what we can learn from this is there's not really much instructions to Scanavin 1787 that could not have been given 20 seconds later. If he needs to set, if he needs to slow down, he's not crashing with anybody. So I would advise everybody to don't get too preoccupied with going over and talk to these guys that are basically not part of your core flow at the moment. 1787, he's gonna come in, he's gonna be part of the flow, and he's gonna be fitted in. No, sorry, Thomas. I didn't even know he was. Okay, Jamie Payne. Who's that? Is that London Controller? Who's that? Okay, we all know he's a. Yeah. Anyways, um, so he's gonna come into the flow, and he's gonna probably gonna be merged in with Lufthansa Cargo somewhere. But don't forget. what is the prime objection? The prime objection is within this square here of getting people turned. So the process was completely correct, but just that tiny 10-second of of doing something else that can make the big difference. Um, and this is nothing that any of us couldn't have done either. Um, so it's could have happened to anyone, but the oh, the result will still remain that now you end up, of course, having to do the longer final. So this is a good example of how little it really takes, how little you have to get out of the comfort zone before something comes. Um, so I'm just reading my so in order not to talk too much, just want to scroll a little bit ahead because the stuff here is stuff we already talked about. 28, 29. So just gonna go a little bit ahead here. And this is kind of what Rob was asking about as well. With do we need to give 180 to Emirates here? Because we don't really know how he's going to end up in regards to Air France. He's still going to do the intercept. Air France is having 200 already and doesn't really have anything in front of him. So I definitely recommend not to be too fast on the trigger with these things. So I just want to talk about something, some calculation that we have different when they come in here 10. We want to slow them down to 180. Now some use 180 till 6, some use 160 till 4, and a very limited platinum group uses both at the same time. Um, which ones do you guys prefer to use? Does anybody have any preference on 180 till 6, 160 till 4? They're both allowed. You use 180 till 6, 160 till 4. Use okay. Anybody? So you okay? So mainly 180 till 6, 160 till 4. Is there use 180 till 6? So I did the calculation of what is the difference in zero wind condition between it. And I can conclude that if you ask somebody at 10 miles to do 180 to 6 versus you ask somebody to do 160 to 4, the difference is nothing. It is going to end up within a less than 5-second margin exactly the same. So it doesn't really matter when you do it. There can be, except for yours, Kenneth. I'll get back to that. So if you do 186, 160 to 4, there's going to be no difference. Um, where there can be a difference is that where 180 to 6 can be more useful is when you have a lot of wind because you are not slowing up the queue behind you as fast. Your main concern is the people behind that guy. Where on the other hand, the advantage of 160 to 4, that's actually the one I normally use, um, except that I just give them 180 anyway when on the ILS, and then I assign them 160 to 4 when they are around 6 miles anyway. The benefit of 160 to 4 is that there's less time for if you have one that has a very slow landing speed and one that has a very fast landing speed, there will be less time for that big speed difference to occur. So in zero wind, with people with the same landing speed, there will be no difference. But if the guy ahead has a landing speed of 120 and the guy behind has a landing speed of 145, then they are gonna get closer to each other if you do the 180 to 6 because they're gonna slow down earlier. Now the one that Kennedy is doing, 180 to 6, 160 to 4, that is gonna be faster. Um, I don't use it. I think it can be a personal choice. I think it's too long to say, and it's not beneficial in the frequency. But that will save about 10 seconds with my calculations. That would more or less save about 10 seconds. Yeah. Uh-huh. That you can also do. Many ways to skin a cat. The only regulation I can find on it is you're not allowed to give 180 until more than 6 miles. You cannot say 180 to 5, 180 to 4. You can The 180 has to be cancelled at 6 miles. Um, in the end, I just want to let you guys know, if you do it at 10 miles, unless you have a crazy wind, it's not gonna make a huge difference. Almost no difference. If you give it in normal aircraft conditions, it is gonna make very little difference. So do what you like. Personally, what I do is I reduce them to 180 here anyway. So I just wait until they're between 8 and 6 miles, and then I give them 160 to 4. Because there's no need to give them 180 to 6 if they are 6.5 miles. But you can all decide to do, of course, exactly as you like. But I just wanted to make sure that I said that there's actually not really much difference. Um, uh-huh, uh-huh. That's and that is a very good point. It gives 2 miles more for people to do this insane slowdown that creates enormous speed differences. Um, I can only recommend what I'm doing 160 to 4. Um, if the wind conditions are very high, then keep them 180. But I'm on the same train as Kenneth with 160 to 4 will solve these issues. And if wind is not an enormous factor, so if surface wind is not more than 20 knots, 18, 20 knots, then I think 160 will do better as well. But again, it's exactly as you like. Uh, when I find it appropriate. Um, Sometimes I give it at 8, sometimes I give it at 7, sometimes give it at 9. At at the end, again, yeah, because when they come in and because I normally what I do is as you can see as well, I keep them in the ILS. I keep them at 200 because you want to keep them moving in on the localizer. You don't want to slow them down too early. You don't want to push them down to 180 just because they just out of pure principle. But within 10 miles, that's kind of where a pilot should say, can we reduce? So that's why I normally do 10 miles. I think Sonic is doing it here with Air France, for example. He has 200, and now he gets 180. I think there he gets 180, 8 miles. Um, but I normally I will often, sorry. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you the idea, yeah, but you want to keep it at 200 as long as you can. I mean, keep them until it's that they really slow down. You see Air France here. He's established on the ILS there at 14 miles. Are there any reason to slow him down to 180? Absolutely not. You rather want to keep him moving. Keep the keep the bunch moving until you really have to. And then when you put him down, you can put him down here, you can put him down a little bit later. In the end, the difference is not going to be anything super significant. we're talking seconds. We're talking margins of errors about how pilots. If this guy already has his gear down, he's gonna slow down much faster. Maybe the guy has his gear up, then he's gonna slow down slower. It's within these margin of errors. But as Kenneth says, the overreaction by pilots by going from down to their approach speed, especially if their approach speed is really low, that's a difference. If you then do 180 to 6, and this guy, he's nervous, so then he says, bam, I go down to 115 knots now at 6 miles. There you might get issues. But if a 20 knot difference is going to be cancelled at 10, 9, or 8, is not going to be anything you need to worry about. Also, don't forget. Yeah, exactly. Because you're going to have to slow everybody down. And don't forget, guys, you have the margin as well with these 3 miles. You can go down to 2.5. By the time they're at the tower, they can go down even to 2. So don't be afraid to see the. I don't know why the red lines are still showing here on the ILS, because it should be in the sector file that they only show within 2.5 miles. You still have miles to give it. 2.5 miles, a little bit more tight on 04 left, but at 22 left, it's normally not an issue. If pilots are at expert vacating, you will not really have an issue. You're going to be fine. Um, so don't be too worried. Don't be too conservative. I'd much rather prefer that you're not conservative, and then when something goes over the line, then you know, okay, that's where the line is. And then you can work on staying as close to the line without being over it. But if you're always overly conservative, then you don't really get to get a feeling for where how close can I push it. And if you don't get that feeling, then yeah, then you don't improve as much. So I recommend just don't be afraid to take that in if you believe it, if you think it's good, if it fits with the criteria that are being put up and what we're talking about here. Give it a go, see how it works. If it doesn't work, it's virtual air traffic simulations, and we can try again. It's not real life. Um, so yeah, that is pretty much all I have from this. Because I'm not gonna finish the video. Um, because there's no need to keep going. I just wanted to show something real quick because Kenneth was talking about it with how much speed restrictions, how much it can change. So if you look at here, for example, this is 22 left. I just changed the. So this is one of the days. I don't know why this is 230 at 9. Is this the wrong one? I think it's the right one. Sorry, this is not the one I was. Damn, I apologize. Sorry. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, it's the wrong one I have here. I created so many videos. This is the one. This is the one. So I just want to see if I can find something here that can show speed differences. Look at this guy here. This is one of the ones, 24018. So here the upper wind is going to be 270 at 36, something like this. Look at this guy is getting 180. He's doing 230 ground speed. I do think that he is about to slow down, but still that says something about how much. Even here, 230 knots giving 180. So this is the kind of wind where you have to be so careful what you're doing, especially because as you're turning guys to final, they're going to be very fast on one side, they're going to be very slow on the other side. Um, and that's why sometimes, look at this guy. I'm keeping him at 220 on the intercept, and he's still only doing 180. Now, as a little bit of a, imagine if he has 180 now, this is my point a little bit on when the wind is strong and we're saying, oh, they go so fast on downwind. Slow them to 180 when they're here. Imagine if this guy's doing 180 now. Then you can deduct 40 knots. Then he has a ground speed of 143 knots as he intercepts. I promise this is a killer. Especially because this guy that is above him, that has to be sequenced behind him, this guy, he's going to come in and he's going to have no wind whatsoever. So even though he has 200 as well, they have a 50 knot difference. So how do you get this guy down so far in speed? You can't get him that far down in speed. He has to go to final approach speed. And then of course he turns in, he's going to lose a lot of speed again. Now the gap is going to build again and you're going to have issues with the guy behind. So there's no specific way to solve this issue other than be prepared, have that in your mindset um, about not to get speed down too fast because it can end up really punishing you. And at the end, the aim of the game is whoever goes behind Finna 953, he's gonna go X amount of miles behind him. The difference is he gonna go like this and turn here, or is he gonna keep up the speed and he's gonna turn here anyway, but he's gonna be the same distance. The problem is, of course, once he's down in the speed, then once he gets turned, it can really create stuff. So I just wanted to bring it up here with regards to the wind of how it can be. This is what we've been having in Copenhagen for the last while. I think this was kind of what Kenneth was talking about as well, right? About how much it can be. Anyways, is there any questions or anybody who'd like to add a little bit, something that doesn't make sense, something that they disagree on, something we need to talk about? Who's hey? Yeah, we none of us can be expected to do this perfectly. This is when we're doing these things. It's I hope there's nobody here think it's because that anybody thinks that somebody's not up to standard. It's an attempt to reach a standard that I think that nobody except maybe outside of the UK has in Europe in regards to how tight we are vectoring guys in. I think this whole thing is setting the bar very high because at this traffic level that we have at VTC nowadays is something that we have to give a shot and see can we get a big amount of controllers up to this level so that we can actually make this happen. Um, One of these vectors we should try to put one of the Swedish controllers on final and get a taste of what the standard is. And then we'll see that a lot of us are actually really doing well in these things. But there's always they will log off, they will rage quit. Um, so I hope this has been a somewhat learningful experience and that somebody would be willing to record their sessions once again as well, so that we can hold a third one. Um, it might actually make sense to hold a third one at some point about this with the high wind and some of the thoughts that goes in the process when the wind is very high. Um, in the meantime, if you haven't had a take a look on Moodle, the final part of it is already done, and these things, these markers, these tactical markers we're talking about, um, they are. Uh, Wait, is Stefan in the audience? Hi, Stefan. Definitely. And especially also when you have the wind like you have here, there's a very regular wind in Copenhagen where it's 220, 230 here, and it goes up to 270. The one thing that can really mess up is the fact that this guy is gonna go slower here than he's gonna go here. He's gonna speed up as he goes to final, which is contrary to what we're used to. We're contrary used to they line up with final in the headwind, and then they are going slower. In this fact, he's actually gonna go faster. Um, no, but that's the wind. That's the wind. So when you have 240 at 20, you can pretty much expect that it's gonna veer 30 degrees. So it's gonna go 240 is gonna become 270, and 20 is gonna become 40. So I'm still trying to evaluate. I'm looking a lot into to MSFS and seeing what it does because they're saying that it takes it from this uh, meteorology website. From what I've seen so far, it almost fits perfectly to this. Also, what I'm seeing is, yeah, yeah, but this is part of the problems. This is the part of the problem you saw on Monday. You had on Monday as well, and that FS 2024 have different winds. I have a tendency to believe that the wind is extracted from this because I've seen that a few places that it's from this. I'm trying to remember what it's called now. It's called meteor blue, and I have a feeling that is in fact extracted from that website because that website only has wind data from the ground and from 5,000 feet. And from what I've seen so far, the wind stays the same 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 when I look around, and it doesn't really change between 3, 4, and 5. And then at some point it starts veering to the wind that's measured on the ground through the meter. If this is the case, and then probably 2024 is going to be more sophisticated, definitely prepared for the ones that still fly. That is more sophisticated with active sky. I fear that this might be a little bit more of an issue in the future. But as long as the differences are not enormous, then again, we have the margins to be able to still don't get too worked up about it. I still think that the main takeaway from these things are just to be aware that this space is going to have a lot of headwind, this space is going to have a lot of tailwind. So don't get this guy too high down in speed, don't get this two guy high up in speed unless you need. If this guy is going to be like Speedbird here, if he's getting turned late, you also have more freedom to still get him in, and you can make up a lot of space. Actually, I think this doesn't it happen here actually. No, it doesn't. But it happened at some point in the video where I forgot somebody, and that airplane ended up getting quite far behind. But by the virtue of the fact that they were still at 220, when you turn them in, they could still make up because 130 versus 236. There's just so much chance to make up stuff. Anyways, anybody else like to share something before we stop for tonight? I think the video has also been more than long enough. Thank you very much. Shouldn't have. Well, that's the least I can do. Thank you for actually that. I'm happy to see somebody wanted to show up and wanted to listen to me. So I will. Well, if we only do it as often as somebody is willing to send me an approach video that we can look through, and that's basically, yeah. If anybody is wanting to record their video of everything, then I'm very happy to do debriefing about it. So that's of course an open invitation to anybody, as long as they're not afraid to have things pointed out. Now, of course, we have pointed a lot of things. We pointed things out here on Sonic's video. This is not to shame Sonic or telling that he did wrong. This is in order for when something goes wrong, which it does for all of us all the time on final, because this traffic load is close to being insane. Then we have a chance now to take it. We have a chance to learn about it, and I think that next time everybody sits on final, there's going to be things that are just going to go better because we have these things in mind. Um, I think I said yesterday, if somebody is feel like they have issues with this, with sitting on final, having the issue of feeling a little bit too much over the place, consider getting that square there, uh, where you need to control it from, be around that and then disable the panning. So you can only zoom out and in. So you can zoom out if you need to take a tag that's outside your airspace, but in that way you don't jump too much around, but you can keep that. Personally, I like it. I think it works. But yeah, up to the individual. Anyways, I'm gonna stop the video now.